Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Hi everyone, welcome to Road to Cheltenham. Ruby and I have got a really good week's action to look back on. The weekend thrilled, and in some cases it puzzled as well.
Yeah, definitely. Some good performances, some, I wouldn't say strange results, but not the results you might have expected. But look, that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's unpredictable.
And we're going to try and unravel it during the course of this show. The obvious place to start, of course, is the Hatton's Grace. Teahupoo was going for 3 in a row, but he was up against a certain Lossiemouth.
He was up against a certain Lossiemouth. Beacon Edge jumped out in front. Teahupoo sat beside him. Maxim elected to sit on Lossiemouth's tail, and for a sense, Jordan Gainford was man-marking Paul Townend, but it was just run so steadily. Beacon Edge didn't go that quick, hacked up to the first hurdle, sort of 28, 29 miles an hour, and that was the kind of speed he maintained. But there was never an injection of pace in here, and Jordan Gainford, as I said, was watching Paul Townend. He was sitting on Paul's boot. Lossiemouth was a bit in Paul's hands early through the race, but when they were going this slow, it was always playing into the hands of the horse that was the quickest. Now, she missed the 4th last, but Paul wanted to get back behind Jordan Gainford. He took her back, he let her run in, and then she settled nicely across the tree out. But because there had been no massive injection of pace, they're up to 32 miles an hour now, but it was always going to play to a real turn of foot and into a sprint. Paul followed Sam Ewing down the straight. Maxim missed the 2nd last, and even here Paul had sat on Sam's tail. He didn't commit or go to him until they got well up to the last, and to quote Paul, she spotted the hurdle herself, took him to it, absolutely fluid, and scooted away to win. Look, a huge finishing speed percentage of 115. That just explains the race, really, doesn't it?
It's part. I mean, they've all got quite a large finishing speed percentage, even Beacon Edge, because he controlled the race from the front, and that just speaks of the crawl. She did hit a good time, though. I mean, her final sectional was very, very impressive. It was the 2nd best of the weekend, spoiler alert, over the 2 days at Fairyhouse. And the problem with the slowly run race is it suppresses ability, but it can also flatter, so you have to work out which is which.
And it's hard to know. I mean, the only thing we knew at the start of that race is that Maxim, Beacon Edge and Teahupoo definitely wouldn't win a champion hurdle. We thought Lossiemouth might. They went slow, so who knows? She still might win a champion hurdle, but it was puzzling to watch, and she was very good, but I don't think you can take any more from it than that.
No, I agree. I don't think she needed to improve on what she achieved last season. Now, how about Teahupoo? With the ground and that trip combined, which is probably at the bottom end of his stamina range, he was always going to be slightly up against it. It's not surprising it wasn't as impressive as last year.
No, and he's a year older, so if anything, he's going to always want 3 miles now. Winning a 2.5 is going to be harder for him. But did he lose much in defeat? He's still only beaten Beacon Edge a couple of lengths, but again, the race wasn't really run to suit him. And not quickish ground, it was good ground. We're on the easy side of good, but we know that he does like a good dig in the ground, so I wouldn't be too disappointed with him, but I don't think anything suited him at the weekend.
The only good thing about him being a year older is that Gordon Elliott said afterwards that might mean we see him at Christmas rather than going straight to Cheltenham. We might see him in the Christmas hurdle at Leopardstown.
Yeah, he definitely didn't have a hard race in Fairyhouse. No. So I could see maybe that pushing Gordon or encouraging Gordon to run him at Christmas, and it would be good to see him at Christmas. You want to see the best horses, so it would be good if he did run at Christmas.
Talking of Christmas, we've got the entries for some of the significant races at Leopardstown. Let's have a look first at the betting, anti-race betting from Paddy Power for the 2-mile hurdle. Now, this is interesting, isn't it? Because we've got Stateman there at 4-7 to retain his title in this race. Brighter Days Ahead, who lowered his colours last time in the Morgiana. Lossiemouth there also. Let's hear from Willie Mullins next and see what his immediate reaction after Lossiemouth's success was, because he's talking about keeping her and Stateman apart without exactly identifying a race for Lossiemouth.
We were always going for the champion hurdle this year. She's on course for that, unless something happens untoward over Christmas or around Dublin Racing Festival, depending on where she goes. You know, she has a choice of engagements. I'll try and keep herself and Stateman apart.
So, is there an inclination Stateman may be more likely for Leopardstown?
He's always going to Leopardstown. You know, he loves that place, and I think that's where, at the moment, that's the obvious thing to do, and find somewhere else for her to go.
Now, I took that to mean Christmas hurdle, Lossiemouth. And interestingly, Joe Chambers, the racing manager, Sir Rich and Susanne Ritchie have since said, yes, very much Kempton. But you didn't take that way, did you?
No, I didn't. I suppose I was thinking, or trying to figure out what Willie's thinking, which can be a dangerous thing to do. But there's obviously the Railkeel in Cheltenham as well on New Year's Day, which
penalty?
is 2.5. She would have a penalty in that, but she was entered in it last year. Didn't go. She only 4, turn 5. She's 5, turn 6 now. So that's probably another one to chuck into the mix as well. I honestly don't know, and I haven't asked Willie where she's going, but I wouldn't rule out the Railkeel.
The International is another, but I suppose
that's not till the trials then. That's not till the 28th, isn't it? Or the 20, whatever it is of January. That's right into the middle of the month. And Willie, yeah, I don't know, has Willie really thought about where she's going or what way he's going to go about it with her, but I think the only thing you can take from that is that herself and Stateman won't line up in the same race in Leopardstown at Christmas. Yeah,
unless something goes wrong. And Ritchie indicating via his racing manager that he'd be up for Kempton. Would Willie be up for that?
It's a race he's gone to in the past. Fahim won it a couple of times. I'd say it would depend on the strength of the race, Lydia. What turns up from the English horses? Does Sir Gino go jumping fences? Does Constitution Hill line up? I'd say it'll depend on the strength of the race.
We'll obviously get to Sir Gino later in the show. Let's hear the aftermath from Gordon Elliott's perspective. He starts off talking about Teahupoo, but you can't help but feel he's thinking about brighter days ahead at some point during this conversation.
I thought he ran a great race, Gary. I thought he lost nothing in defeat. He got bet by a very, very good mare, given £7. She looks just a bit special. We'll be trying to fight her on here wherever she goes. Yeah.
Last year, of course, you put him on ice after he won this. Is that the plan with him again, or could you revise it?
I think he's stronger this year. I think there'll be improvement on today. I don't think we don't think we'd win with a stone. You know what I mean? The way the mare won, but I think he will be sharper for today. I'm not saying I won't run him at Christmas, but listen, there's no plan made. But I'm not just. It won't be as in concrete that we're going straight there.
Yeah, obviously, if you don't go at Christmas, there'll be something like the Cleve hurdle, I guess you could aim at, or you won the Galmoy hurdle before.
Yeah, look, if I don't go to Christmas, I'll probably go straight to Cheltenham. So we'll see how he is next week.
So when he's talking about we'll try and avoid the mare, Lossiemouth, he's talking about brighter days ahead, isn't he? He's not talking about Teahupoo because their paths diverge from here.
Yeah, they do diverge. I think you could definitely draw that from the conversation, but I'd say, the more I was thinking about it, I'd say he does think that a Cleve or a Galmoy are just too close to Cheltenham for Teahupoo. So
yes,
yeah, I'd say you might see him at Christmas, all right.
Yeah, if we're going to see him at all. Now, that thing that we sort of intimated, or Gordon Elliott intimated in that conversation, is bad news for these two who are discussing on our YouTube Road to Cheltenham channel, anticipating Lossiemouth versus Stateman versus Constitution Hill versus Sir Gino versus brighter days ahead. Now that will be a champion hurdle for the ages. That just says to me that these people are starved of top class champion hurdles.
Yeah, but if you could get the 5 of those to line up in the one championship race, yeah, it would be an incredible contest. But having said that, you would imagine 1 or 2 will have knocked 1 or 2 of those out of the way by the time Cheltenham comes around.
Potentially. Gordon is already talking about the mare's hurdle, having talked about the champion hurdle all the way along.
Look, and the results will dictate obviously where they end up, but yeah, I mean, that would be some horse race to have the 5 of them in it.
But it speaks of, I think, what fans really want to see, and I think that's why people loved the John Durkan last weekend so much.
Yeah, of course they do, and that's what everybody wants to see. But getting it to happen and then talking about it and actually having it happen are 2 very different things.
I suppose maybe it's nostalgia. We feel like we had it more often in the olden days.
Yeah, but I don't think we had 5, did we? Did we ever? Think of a race where you had 5 that you wanted to see taking each other on.
That would be very rare.
I
3,
don't remember
definitely.
5, 3, yeah. But I don't remember 5. No, I'm sure there was. Please post your answers on there.
Maybe
Stamp.
in the Night Nurse era there might have been. No, maybe probably 3.
I definitely don't remember that era.
Now, you've all been talking about how your reaction to the races that we've seen over the weekend. Let's have a look at the reaction to Lossiemouth. This is from the bookies' foe, who loves Lossiemouth, but thinks her performance at the weekend was extremely exaggerated, the reaction to it, because she had every right to win. This is the point that you're making, Ruby.
She did, and it probably was exaggerated. But look, it's like anything. You get fans of a horse and people want to just run with it. She was very, very good. Did we learn anything new? I don't think so.
I think I take James's point about crawling for the first circuit of the Hatton's Grace, and then because then you've got plenty of energy left to sprint at the end.
Yes.
Hitting certain speeds and sustaining them suggests that you're capable of a bigger performance in future. I'm not sure I agree the Lorena comparison. I think Lossiemouth has achieved far more than her.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a whole year. Lossiemouth, there's a whole extra years of racing under her belt. She obviously won the Triumph and a Mayor's Hurdle before she attempted to go back for a champion hurdle, or might attempt to go back for a champion hurdle, whereas Lorena went back after winning the Mayor's Novice Hurdle. So, no, poor comparison.
Okay. Now, these two are less impressed, and they've also decided what's going to happen for the rest of the season. So you may as well switch off now. No point watching racing TV for the rest of the year, because What's Racing About podcast and Ollie Pace have got it all sorted. Lossiemouth are running the mares. Constitution Hill isn't coming back the way he was. Stateman's had his day. Sir Gino won't run against Stateman and may head to the Arkle anyway. Anzadam for the champion hurdle it is.
I hope he got the 40s. But that obviously is a view that someone could have, but that's even too pessimistic for me.
Yeah, I was going to say. They've managed to get under your bar of pessimism, which is incredible. Ollie Pace was far more impressed with Sir Gino, who we're about to get onto, saying that he could have won by 20 lengths and Lossiemouth just won a sprint against a stayer. But Ollie is still thinking that Sir Gino's going to go chasing.
Sure, it hasn't been ruled out, so we don't know. That said, he was impressive in the fighting fifth, and he'll still be a novice chaser next year.
Yeah, he's joined us now in the studio over there by the cushions. There is Sir Gino. What did you make of the fighting fifth? It was billed as a match between him and Mystical Power. One didn't turn up.
Yeah, you can bill a match, and unfortunately one didn't turn up, is right. Mystical Power, for my money, jumped 2 hurdles and was goosed. Well, no, actually jumped 3 and was beaten then before they rounded to the 4th hurdle. He looked to be going as fast as he could, or wasn't going at all. He never turned up. I was impressed with Sir Gino. He beat Lump Sum. I thought he jumped better this season than he did last year, and he won with the authority that you kind of hoped he might do, or one of the two of them would. And yeah, it was a really good performance from Sir Gino. He's still 4 raising 5. It's still a difficult year for horses, and be interesting to see where he goes and how he gets on. But I did think his jumping had improved. Yeah,
it was. I don't mean this strictly. It was reminiscent to some degree of Constitution Hill in terms of it was a powerful performance in the fighting fifth, and it wasn't too far off. The way he closed out the race from about 4th out was really impressive.
Yeah, he did, and the way he hit the line, you'd be really pleased with him. He just probably isn't as quite a flashy a horse as Constitution Hill.
His jumping isn't.
No, and Nico still had to move on this fella, whereas Constitution Hill just seemed to do it without being asked. So it was a good performance, but still think he has a bit to go. There's no doubt about that.
I agree. Let's take a look at how his jumping has improved, or has it just become more consistent?
More consistent. He always had the jump. He just wasn't doing it all of the time. So you see him at Kempton, what he was losing speed-wise. Then at Cheltenham, 3.8 miles per hour per jump on average. Aintree, he was better at 2.96, but that's still not good enough for a champion hurdle. Whereas at Newcastle, in open company against older horses, whereas the other 3 runs are all against 4-year-olds, his jumping was much slicker, much quicker, and as you say, consistent. He always had the jump in him, and you can see it. We'll show him at Liverpool last year, where he's awkward at the last hurdle, but he has the jump then at the last hurdle to get himself out of that. So yeah, he can do it. He's just doing it consistently now. And I wonder, was that jumping over schooling over fences?
We discussed that last week.
Just to get his feet up and make the effort.
It did seem to have had some kind of impact on him, but then again, if you're going to stick hurdling, you want to go lower and flick a little bit more.
You do, but you don't want to be galloping into hurdles like he was. You still want to get off the ground. Yes, by all means, take the top bar, but horses can get complacent too, and most of them are much stronger than a hurdle, and then when they learn to kick it out of the way, they just kick them out of the way.
Justin Wilson has sent in a question, and he wants to understand this. He mentions our discussion last week of Sir Gino. He points out that he was less slick than is required to win a champion hurdle. I think that's fair, but obviously the horse is still learning. He's only 4 rising 5. He says, is it just a question of a horse going over and over hurdles, or does a jockey have to also ride differently when schooling?
I suppose you get up to that standard, you probably would school faster and get them as low as you can. But you're trying to fine-tune a technique at his standard more so than teach him to jump. He knows how to jump. You're just trying to put him under a bit of pressure to get him to be as quick as he possibly can be. You probably wouldn't ride much different, just go a little bit faster.
And would they be doing that yet? Because they haven't definitively decided what they're going to do.
No, and even with that, obviously, with the more schooling you do, the more risk there is. So how much risk are you willing to take? Or how much risk do you have to take? No one wants to take unnecessary risk. So, no, I wouldn't think they are. But to do a lot of schooling at Seven Barrows, and I'm sure he'll do some more.
Just want to mention Lumsden. I think he's improving in his own little orbit.
He is a good winner of the Welsh champion hurdle, wasn't it? And it was a cracking run from him. And I thought the mare at John Joe's, tell her the name, I thought she could win a handicap off her mark.
Okay. But the flop, undoubtedly, of the race was Mystical Power. Gary O'Brien caught up with Willie Mullins the following day.
The only disappointment this weekend really was Mystical Power. Is he okay?
He was fine. After the race, he was 100%. Absolutely. He jumped the first very keen and very well. And then, you know, we tried to settle him in behind Sir Gino, and maybe he just didn't enjoy that. And maybe then with his pedigree he wants to go much further. You know, he's out of any power by Galileo. Maybe he just wants 2.5 miles plus.
So, I don't know. I mean, it looked to me like he was just never going. It was really early.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I don't think, perhaps he does want 2.5 miles, but I think he was beaten too early. And he didn't even keep going well enough. I think it was a no-show, but look, he knows better. Well,
he's a horse that confused me last season, so I thought he was a horse that would be favoured by conditions favouring speed. So, like, he was outstayed in the Supreme, I thought. And then Punchestown came along, which was on good to soft ground, and he looked like he needed every inch of a well-run, extended 2 miles to get there.
He did, and I suppose he was the other side of Firefox at entry. He was in front of Firefox. Firefox got in front of him then at Punchestown. I wonder if you start questioning that form. But
yes.
No, I just think look, you can forgive any horse one day, and I don't have an answer for what Mystical Power did. I don't know what Mystical Power is, but I wouldn't just be judging him on the fighting fifth.
I'm interested that you mentioned the questioning the form, because that thought has crept into my head belatedly as well. Slade Power's gone chasing and underperformed to expectations on debut.
Yeah, better days ahead, I suppose, beat him, but
was the whole of that form not great?
I don't know. You can draw conclusions quickly on lots of races, and I'm good at that. And I'd like to see them all again.
Yeah, I'm not writing it out. I'm just allowing that.
So am I, and definitely it's there. And to me, it was there with the Cheltenham bumper form. It always is. You have to see how they go and do it over hurdles. Look, but not every year, every race is going to be a good renewal, is it? No, and it's part of the working out, isn't it? Now, onto a horse that has been trailed a couple of times so far in this show already. This is, drumroll, Anzadam winning the Willow Warm. Yes, and it was a decent performance. Dropped in, Bottler Secret and Eagles Reigns were on the front end, grabbed at the first a bit with Paul Townend, but he quickly settled and got in behind runners. Thought he jumped slickly. Gimme 5 was down his inside. Again, wasn't frantically run, but they went a decent enough gallop in this race, and he showed an electrical turn of foot down the outside under Paul Townend to go and win. Cala Conti on the very inside was a race-fit rival who had won a handicap at Down Royal, but I like the way Anzadam did it. Now he bunny hops the last, lands hind end first, which wouldn't be ideal, but they were going a fair speed at it, and you know, he good fractions on the way home. Good performance, plenty of experience from France. Didn't get to run last season, but again, he's 4 rising 5. It's an awkward time for him. Where does he go next? Probably harder to slot him in than it is Lossiemouth. Funny you should say that. That's exactly what Willie Mullins was thinking.
Couldn't get him out last year. I wanted aiming for the Triumph Hurdle last year. Just couldn't get him right. He's, I'd say, half right now. Maybe that's the way to train him, but because of his troubles last year, I said I'll just get him on the racetrack, and he blew me away now. That was some performance.
It was serious. Anything in mind for him?
He's 4, so he has to take on Grade 1 horses now, and I'm trying to think, where can I avoid Stapeman, where can I avoid Lossiemouth? and maybe I'd be looking for something in England because I just can't think of a hurdle race in Ireland. He's won 3 from 3 now. It's going to be difficult to place him and avoid all the real top ones.
This is becoming a thing, isn't it, this newfound obsession with the British programme?
Yeah, he's flat out at it, isn't he? Maybe he want to start opening it. Obviously, there was a 4-year-old hurdle in the past in Limerick. It's gone. It's now a 3 and 4-year-old handicap. Esport, Dazzling, Calixias. Calixias winner get chinned on the line. I think Calixias got back up to win. That race is gone. So, yeah, he is now pretty much into open company, and there's just not a huge amount of races. He was going to have to take on something. Where do you think, what's your instinct of where he might go? I honestly don't know. Could he go to the International? Yeah, it's the end of the month. He obviously doesn't. He's not a Grade 1 winner, so he wouldn't have a penalty in the race. But that's not until the end of January. And I wonder, being a 4-year-old, I'd say Willie could wait till then with him. 4 Rising 5, he waited that long with Lossiemouth last year. He didn't run her in that race, and she could have with a penalty. But I'd say he might wait till the end of January, now that you talk about it, before he takes on all the horses. He is the proud owner of the fastest finishing speed from Fairyhouse over the 2 days at the weekend. Again, it was a slowly run, and he got lots of energy left at the end. He did, yeah. I think maybe the ground might have suited him too. He looked a fast horse, didn't he? He did. He was with Anna Shai, and he was with him running in March and April of last season. As we just heard from Willie, he couldn't get him onto the track last time around. So another exciting one. So that is Constitution Hill and Sir Gino with Nicky Henderson. The Donnellys, Joan, Mary have Sir Gino, Anzadam and Stateman. Willie Mullins has Anzadam, Stateman and Lossiemouth. It's confusing, isn't it? For them, I mean. Yeah, I'd say it's the kind of confusing problem anyone would like to have. Yeah, well, that is true, but it does add a layer of... It does, as to where they're going to go. Unlike anything, I mean, each one of those different sets of connections is going to try to want to maximise the potential of all of their horses, so that makes the pieces move around a bit more. Terrible problem to have. We end this section by going back to where we started with horses that will be competing in the staying division. We've seen Teahupoo, who was the top staying hurdler of last season. A horse that was catching him towards the end was Strong Leader, and he returned in the long distance hurdle last Friday. He did at Newbury, and he obviously beat Monmoral and Langer. Dan, he's his own way of jumping, Strong Leader, there's no doubt about that. But he does get himself from one side to the other. And I actually thought he looked a better horse at Newbury last weekend than the one I watched last year. First time he attempted 3 miles was obviously in last year's Cleve. And I think he improved from there to entry when he beat Buddy One. And he was impressive at Liverpool when he won. And I did like what I saw at Newbury. What about you? This is him winning last year. Hitting Valley Lake behind him back in third, Floating Porter and Monkfish fourth and fifth, but he hit the line strong. I don't think he's a horse that kills himself when he's in front. I thought he was waiting, well, actually Sean Bowen waited for Harry Cobden all the way down the straight in Newbury, but I think they rode him a little bit like he wouldn't stay in the Cleve, and he was probably further back than he wanted to be. Well, they quickened down the hill and left him too far back, but I just say there's no doubt about his stamina. Ollie Murphy was questioning him on an undulating track and was sort of hinting that maybe he was a better horse on a flat track. His best runs were Newbury and Aintree, but I think if he hadn't gotten himself so far back in the Cleve, he would have been closer. Yeah, I know what Ollie means, because I wonder whether the undulations contributed to him not jumping very well and therefore getting quite far back in a stop-start pace of the Cleve. He gets badly outpaced when they start rolling on from 2 out, doesn't he? He did, but he just has his own way of jumping, and I think because he's developing his own technique, I think he's getting better at it. Being very polite. Well, but it is. I mean, that's just him. He's never going to take the eye out of your head. He's not a great jumper, but he is getting better at the way he does it. And as he gets quicker at developing his own technique, it'll make him a better horse. And he's unexposed at 3 miles. He's 7 rising 8. He's only had 3 goes at that trip. But there could be a lot more to come. There could, and obviously he'll go to Ascot, or you would hope he'll go to Ascot for the long walk. It would look the obvious place for him next up. And I think in a division that maybe lacks depth compared to some of the other ones, he's definitely a player. Monmiral pushed him all the way whilst not being quite good enough. I think he was receiving £2, would have got about a stone from him in a handicap. How about Langer Dan, the notorious Langer Dan, who's subject of much discussion, as the Skeltons are well aware. Dan Skelton has pointed out that target this season is the Stayers Hurdle. He's
got to prove his stamina, even if this time of year he's not really the horse he is in the spring, according to them.
Yeah, he definitely does. Like dual Coral Cup winner, just touched off in an entry hurdle over 2.5 or 2.5, whatever it is. Yeah, it doesn't strike me as an out-and-out stayer, so look, he's going to be a better horse in the spring, but he'll have to be.
Let's take a look at the betting then for the Christmas hurdle at Leopardstown, at which Teahupoo might turn up, according to Gordon Elliott. Antipost, he is 3-1 favourite with Paddy Power. Home by the lead there is 7-2. Bob Bollinger is 9-2. All the horses that you would generally expect, plus Hewick, who dabbles in this division, ditto Noble Yates. Anything catching your eye there?
No.
Fair enough.
There's not. It's Teahupoo, and the rest are just some really admirable horses in there, and horses that would be fun to own. But do you look at one of those and think that'll take off when it gets 3 miles? I can't see brighter days ahead running in that race, but no. Intense Raffles maybe. Good winner of the Irish National. He's relatively unexposed. I think he's in a handicap at Navan at the weekend. But again, you'd have to think that the Grand National is his aim, not a Stayers hurdle.
Yeah, I think you had them at no. So we've come to the end to the hurdling section. We're now going to hand over to Ruby to analyse what was a frustrating day on Sunday at Fairyhouse for analysts, perhaps also the jockeys.
It's not very often you try to analyse something and you're not really sure what you're analysing, but I'm going to have a go anyway, because the graded races at Fairyhouse on Sunday were somewhat strange to watch. You had one that was completely overrun and then 3 that were underrun. So did you walk out of Fairyhouse thinking that was spectacular? No, you walked out feeling a little bit puzzled. So if you go at them from the top, and I know more than anybody that jockeys are humans and we're going to make mistakes, but if you look at the first one, Cool Dreamer blazed along in front in the juvenile hurdle, and that sucked Paul Townend and Willie the Hool into following him, but they did go too quick, and the race then ended up falling into the lap of Richie Deegan, unnaturally nimble, who came from the next parish, looked like he was riding to run well, and ended up collecting the pot. You jump forward to the Royal Bond. Romeo Coolio, who's your favourite, sits in 4th position, nice and safe, a little bit of light, but when the race doesn't quicken, 4 out to 3 out, Sam Ewing doesn't force it, and everybody else is left watching him. Bellocchio and Sia Sands were too far back, so they couldn't get involved, and the race turns into a sprint and sort of ends up in Danny Mullins' lap aboard Toonsavator. Then you had the Drinmore. Firefox sits in down the inside. Hartwood spends the whole race looking at him. Gorgeous Thomas looking on. Mark Walsh and Darragh O'Keefe looking at Keith Donoghue, and Sam Ewing, who's in front, eventually ups the ante from 5 out. Now he nails it from the 5th last home, but you kind of got the feeling that he was only there in sufferance. And then you rolled on to the Hatton's Grace. Lossiemouth's the speedster, 3 stairs from the Gordon Elliott yard, and yet they never went quick. Maxim man marked Lossiemouth, but neither Teahupoo or Beacon Edge, Keith Donoghue and Sam Ewing pressed the issue. So what did you end up with? You ended up with results, but did you think that it was spectacular? I'm not so sure, but the only thing I do know is I bet you more jockeys went to bed on Sunday night wanting to have another go than went to bed happy.
So that's framed 2 of the races we're about to look at. This whole section is one that we haven't really looked at, this division, is it, Ruby, so far properly in this series so far? It's a quick look at the juveniles and a proper look at the novice hurdlers.
Yeah, and there's a lot of novice hurdlers to look at.
Yeah, there are, and I've seen the long list of them, and I'm looking forward to you managing to get through all of them. But first of all, we're going to have a look at the juvenile hurdle. You've already explained how it was run. Did that have an impact on the result?
I think it did. They went a really good gallop. Obviously, the filly in front of Willie McCreary's was Cool Dreamer. Going out to her left, she went a good gallop. Willie de Hoy just sat in second. He was a bit lively, but naturally Limble drops well off him, and kind of looked like Richie Deegan was following around to have a go or see where he ended up. But look, it falls into naturally Nimble's hands. Cool Dreamer fades, Willie de Hoy picks it up. Now he was still going to go gallop to the last, but when he landed over that hurdle, he stops, and that allows naturally Nimble to come home and win. I don't know what was expected of Willie de Hoyle or Willie de Hool, but he got beaten, and it's probably disappointing, but I do think they went too hard.
He did a lot, didn't he, chasing that leader?
I think so too.
Yeah.
But you know my opinion on juveniles. We're already talking about them a month ago.
Yeah, I do know. That said, Nürburgring, didn't he win this race last year? And he'd be a quicker horse, whereas Naturally Nimble seems to me to look like more of a stayer.
Yeah, and
mile and a half
of course,
on the flat.
Lossiemouth won it the year before, so you know, it can be a race that throws up good horses.
Yeah, it absolutely can be. Yeah, you were talking yourself out of your point there.
Still doesn't mean I don't need to look at them until after Christmas.
OK, so would you have Willie Teahupoo potentially, despite being beaten there, as right at the top of Ireland's juveniles we've seen so far?
I don't know. I don't think we've saw... I don't think we've seen a really good juvenile in Ireland yet. I think the horse that won in Cheltenham, the next horse we're going to look at, East India Dock, was way more impressive than anything that's won in Ireland.
Let's take a look at that.
Here he was at Cheltenham, down the inside, under Sam Twiston-Davis, jumped the first really well, was always close to the pace in the dock, got in close to the second and was quick at it. Look, that's a huge jump length, gain scored, pings the second last, but he's galloping over his rival's second last. He's still doing a half speed, and you'd love the way that he quickened up to the last hurdle, flew that and devoured the hill. Obviously it's on the old course, he's Devonmate Burdett Road, did something similar last year, although he was a much more difficult horse to ride. This fella looks way more straightforward, and yeah, I thought that was a really good performance from East India Dock.
Yeah, he's a different kind of horse. He's a half-brother to Burdett Road, who you mentioned, who James Owen won the race with last year. He was by Muhara. This fellow is by Golden Horn. He stayed an extended 14 furlongs for James Fanshawe and was progressive at the end of last flat season. He is going to like the Triumph trip.
You would have thought so. He ticks a lot of the right boxes, and you know, to me, he's the one horse that has put his hat in the ring anyway.
And Willie Duell obviously comes from Willie Mullins' yard. You know, have you got a vibe on how Willie feels about the juveniles he's got?
No, there's plenty of them there, and you learn a bit more at Christmas and a bit more early in the new year. But he hasn't been hard on the juveniles. He generally isn't.
Okay. We're going to leave the juveniles there for reasons that have been already repeatedly explained, and we're going to have a look at the Royal Bond from Sunday.
Yeah, obviously Romeo Coolio was the big talking horse here, and he was a pretty short price favourite. Gaucher jumped out in front, Plantier, Tunes of Vader down the inside, Bellaccio took his time, and Sia Sands was right at the back. Sia Sands warmed up to it and jumped in better as the race went on, but this is where this race didn't quicken up. Across to the third last hurdle, nobody got involved, and whilst they were going an even pace, it took this race so long to quicken. Tunes of Vader's in behind down to the second last. Sam Ewing rolls over on Romeo and Coolio and makes Danny Mullins come around, and they really sprinted, which left Bellaccio and Sia Sands with a huge amount of work to do. But when Tunes of Vader got out, he just had too many gears for Romeo Coolio in front of him. Gaucher starts to fade, so too did Plantier. Good jump at the last from Tunes of Vader. Sia Sands kind of looked at the wing and ran back in. From where he started, though, he was quite animated in the parade ring, and he was keen in the race, so I could see why Patrick Mullins took his time, but as regards winning the race, he was always too far back, and Romeo Coolio, maybe an injection of pace over to the third last, just to build it up, rather than it waiting from there to the back of the second last before there was a dash, probably would have suited him better.
So you're suggesting that Sam Ewing might be one of the jockeys that was awake at night thinking, oh, I'd like to do that again?
Of course he was. He gave the horse in the Drinmore a great ride. You win one, you lose one, but there's no doubt he'd have gone home and thought, how could I do that differently? Or I'm hoping he went home and thought, how would I do that differently?
And the winner, Tunes of Vader, is now not a novice. I think he was best equipped through his experience and the fact he's raced a lot to deal with a sprint, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. And look, to be fair to Danny, that's the way he rode him. He maximised the potential he had. But yeah, look, it's a grade 2 now instead of a grade 1.
That feels right to me. How about you?
Probably reflective of what happened.
Yeah. But does one beget the other, or is it better in the calendar in your view that is a grade 2?
I think yes. I do think that it's a better place for it, a stepping stone as it should be.
Okay. The next novice that Ruby is going to focus on, we have mentioned in passing earlier in the series. This is Potter's Charm, but you're going to go into him in more detail. Yes,
and look, this is him back at Cheltenham in October, and how he runs into that hurdle there. It was the 5th hurdle, I think it was. He ran into fourth last hurdle, and again at the last he put down with Sam Twiston-Davis. Now, when he went back to Cheltenham then in November, got in close to the first, but you have to remember the horse in front is a brilliant jumper, Valgrand of the Skeltons, but Potter's Charm warmed up, and he learned as he was going, and even though he's losing a bit of ground on Valgrand, his own jumping was so much better in November. Jumps the second last really well, and again at the last he was very good under Sam Twiston, and I really liked this horse. I thought it was an impressive performance. I love horses, Gail Mathers back in third, that improve, learn and improve and keep stepping forward, and I think this this horse is doing that. I don't know, will he go to the Challow probably, maybe his next run? I'm not sure where his next start's going to be.
They were talking either that or potentially if it's testing ground the Formby at Aintree.
Oh, at Aintree on Boxing Day, yeah, that could be an interesting contest for him too, but he's definitely improving with every run, and I think he's an exciting horse.
I think he'd have learned a load in that race because, as you say, Valgrand is a marvellous jumper and he was getting better all the time alongside him.
It is, but I think there was a huge step from October to November, and who knows what the next step could be.
Yeah. I know that Willie Twiston-Davis was always saying that it's just he needs a well-run race. He'll be, you know, his jumping will be fine in a proper normal circumstance.
It looked it there.
Right, next one is Bleu de Vassy for Gordon Elliott and Gigginstown.
Yeah, he was really impressive in the maiden hurdle here at Fairyhouse back in October time. Jumped the second last well, flew the last. It wasn't an outstanding contest, but this fella quickened up and showed he handles decent ground. I think he was much better in a novice hurdle when he went back to Navan. Mr. Percy, My Way of Thinking, Helvig Dream. I thought he jumped really well for Jack, and he always travelled well in what was a much stronger contest. Got in when he had to get in close. He was nimble at it. That was probably his worst jump. Popped the second last, but how quickly he was in control, flew the last. And I love horses that power up the hill in Navan, and this fella, yeah, I thought he was really good. He's not declared at the weekend, and I don't know where he's going to go, but I thought he was good.
Yes, he had an entry in the Navan Grade 2, didn't he, on Saturday, but he's not going for that. Now, they ran him over 2.5 miles in bumper company last season. Does that give you a clue of what they think he is, or not?
I'm not so sure. I do think he has already showed himself to be a better jumper than he was bumper horse. I think his form has improved.
And he looks not devoid of speed as well.
No, he doesn't. He looks sharp enough, and he's run in Fairyhouse in October. That was on decent ground. He showed plenty of boot there.
Yeah, I suppose that it was the 2.5 mile thing that confused me because he's in the 2 mile of the Grade 1 at Christmas, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and obviously didn't run over 2.5 on Saturday, so maybe that's where he's going.
Okay. We're going to take a look at a couple of second season novice hurdlers now, starting with Salvatore Mundi.
Yeah, look, we picked this fella out because he is favourite for the novice hurdle at Christmas in Leopardstown. This is him in the Triumph. He was quite slow at the last hurdle, although he did look here like he was going to run onto the back of Cargeesy and Magsborough and maybe get involved, and then he faded. That was his only start last year. Bunting is just in front of him and ends up behind him. Nürburgring is back in the green colours, the white sleeves, and he runs on to eventually finish fourth. But he gets well beaten at the line, Salvatore Mundi, but for a horse having his first start in Ireland, you have to be impressed. Now, he's maiden hurdle at Tipperary. Some race, wasn't it?
He was 1 to 12, wasn't he?
But he's only doing 30 miles an hour himself. That'll just tell you how slow the horses are behind him are going. I don't think I ever saw a horse as far in front in a horse race. Now, of all the horses behind him, and I do believe there were 12 of them, they've run in 29 races since, and the Blackguard, who finished 10th, has won a race at Tramore. So all he could do was win. He was impressive, and he's obviously a novice for this season.
You've shown that for jokes, haven't you? You just have, I know you have. Right, let's move on to Rancy, who again is a second season hurdler.
Yeah, and he ran just the once for Willie last year, and it was behind Firefox and Ballyburn in a maiden hurdle at Fairyhouse, and he wasn't that far behind him going to the third last. Obviously the big two quickened well away and left him plenty far enough behind, but he finished third all the same. Didn't get to run again. He did come out this year at Punchestown on the 15th of November, and he made all under Mark Walsh. Jumped really well, and it was a dominant performance because he would have been one of the first Willie Mullins winter horses to run. Although the yard might have been having plenty of runners, he was just one of the first of the winter horses, and he beats Will the Wise and Too Much quite impressively. I thought he quickened up well for Mark down to the last hurdle, jumped it nicely, and again another one that looks to have a bright future. But I think as we go through these, Lydia, there's piles of horses running and coming forward, winning races, to suggest that there's still plenty of good horses in training.
What I liked about him, I know he was unhassled on the lead, and therefore that can allow a horse to jump perhaps better than if pressed. Did like how he flicked into hurdles. He would look like he really wasn't afraid of them. He was going into them. I liked his technique a lot.
I did too. Bit of age and obviously experience as well. We'll stand to him.
So you were hinting there are quite a few novice hurdlers. So essentially what this section is doing is just to whet your appetite for this division for the rest of the season. You've packaged a load of them together that have also caught your eye.
Yeah, look, I picked 11 and you could have picked a good few more than that, but we start at the beginning and work forward and see how quickly we can do this. Ballygunner Castle, this is him winning at Fairyhouse. Plenty of hassle from the loose horses, but the ones behind him, not so much Special Cadeau, but Don't Stop the Music, Some Sky and A Dream to Share in the white cap. He did well to win Ballygunner Castle because the loose horse nearly took him out. Up at Haydock, Road Less Travel, the John Joe O'Neill's made it 3 from 3 with a Big Country Mile who nearly tipped up at the last, but you'd like the progress Road Less Travel is making. Carafont bolted in a maiden hurdle at Clonmel last Thursday, only under Patrick Mullins to beat You Have Me in Stitches and Caramoja. Again, a second season novice Carafont, he's going the right direction. That is Regent Stroll, who nearly fell at second last in Newbury, but couldn't have been any more impressive than he was under Harry Cobden. This is Carniquet winning what was supposed to be a jump race to Tremor, that I think only had about 3 jumps in it. He was really impressive, but where he goes, and he will have improved a good bit for that, for fitness wise. Wingman is a horse who has a mind of his own, out to his right here, the second last in Navan, but he's a decent horse. Not a straightforward character, but he did beat in the striped colours 40 coats, and he was impressive. That's Super Sunday, who was 7th in last year's Supreme. He won a maiden hurdle in May as well, a bit like Salvatore Mundi, and could be a horse to pay his way in novice races. This is the Yellow Clay on the right, left ear shot in the red cap, winning at Navan. He wasn't great at the second last, but he jumped the last well to beat Where's My Jet. He runs on Sunday at Navan and is a horse with a huge future. That's the New Lion, winning at Newbury. The skeletons rave about him, and they're rightly so. I thought he was impressive at Newbury too, a bit more of a stare. This is Cashildale, who'd been off the track for 14 or 15 months when he won at Gordon Park, trotted out through the last, but managed to get the job done well. And this race, Butch Cassidy on the inside, coming to join Sir Manzarac and shuffle the deck in third. And I liked how far these 3 pulled of Easter and Legend. They pulled 20 lengths clear of Easter and Legend. And I thought that was a decent maiden hurdle at Punchestown.
Strong performance, set good fractions there, maintain them from start to finish. Yeah, well done, well done. On the clock, I think that will bear it well. Are there any of those that you particularly liked?
I thought that last maiden hurdle looked pretty decent. What else did I like? Pick the one you don't like. I think there's plenty of potential there, and I think a lot of those horses will create good clashes in the novice hurdles in the next month or so.
You mentioned in passing, Ruby mentioned in passing that a couple of them were entered in the Navan novice hurdle. We'll have a look at that in a moment. First, we're going to have a look at Friday's race at Sandown Grade 2. So this is a significant contest on this side of the RSC in terms of graded company. There's Kingston Pride for Nicky Henderson, Bill Joyce represents the O'Neills, and Quebecois for Paul Nichols. They're all 3 of them winners of 1 at Uttoxeter, Carlisle and Chepstow respectively. That should be a decent and competitive race. And then the Navan race that Ruby mentioned, that did have Blur de Vassy in originally, but he doesn't go. Wingman doesn't go. Instead, Gordon has decided to go with the Yellow Clay and Patte Merchant.
Yeah, not surprised. And I think even with the structure of the programme for the Yellow Clay, who would look the obvious 2.5 mile horse to go this weekend, leaves him spot on for the Lawlers in January.
Okay, so that's a taster of the juvenile and novice hurdlers so far this season. So much to enjoy. We're now going to move on to the novice chasers. So let's talk about the novice chasers then, as I suggested. First up, Ruby's already referred to it, the Drinmore, the Grade 1, which involves some novices that are no longer novices.
No, yeah. Obviously, Hartwood. Croke Park booked out to make the running. Apparently, it was a surprise to Sam Ewing and Gordon Elliott. They thought Hartwood might make it. Thought Hartwood was sticky at the second and very sticky at the third for a horse with his experience and runs. He jams right in there and clears the fence completely. Croke Park jumped really well in front. Firefox was kind of ridden for speed down the inside behind. She could be anything. Now, obviously, she got way outpaced at Bangor and she managed to hang on to these all the way. Gorgeous Tom was on the outside under Mark Walsh, but this was a race, again, a bit like the Royal Bond. It just didn't develop in time for some of the stronger stayers. Sam Ewing is in control of it with good jumping down from 5 out, 4 out, 2 out, brilliant jump. Obviously can't ride the very insides. That leaves a gap for Keith Donoghue, but takes a brave novice to go in and land running in a gap the size the Firefox has to go into. And whilst he comes at the last for Keith, he doesn't land galloping. Hartwood, Yeah, maybe on hindsight, if he made more use of his experience, Gorgeous Tom got completely outpaced. You wouldn't think going to the last that he's going to be the one that catches your eye crossing the line, but he does. But again, she could be anything. To me, it was just too close to them. She's an admirable mare, but she'd been way outpaced at Bangor on a previous start. And Croke Park has hung on to beat Firefox, Heartwood, Gorgeous Tom. Four of them flashed by the line together. I don't know.
This is a race that Gordon Elliott said if you ran it 5 times, you might have 5 different results. I think 4 different results I'll allow. I'll take your point about she could be anything. Croke Park, the good things. His jumping warmed up, got better.
He did jump really well, dragged his legs tying down through the last ditch if you were to be hypercritical of him, but there was nothing wrong with that. He jumped really well. It looked to me like he probably even wants a bit further.
He was brave as well, hearty.
Yeah, and he kept pulling it out. Now, they kind of built it up from the fourth last, or just before the fourth, or from the fourth last home. So it wasn't an absolute sprint. They built into top speed and they maintained that from halfway between the last 2 fences.
Like you, I was disappointed with Heartwood given his experience, but Firefox ridden for speed. I mean, I feel like maybe a positive ride over shorter, maybe.
Yeah, but drop him back and go, a bit more positive. He was positive on him, or Sam Ewing was positive on him in the north when he won on him over 2 miles and 3 furlongs. Again, when he went by the line, did he hit the line mad, strong and down royal? Probably not. Maybe you're allowing a bit for fitness. But I did think Heartwood, having won a Leopardstown Chase over 2.5, placed over 3 miles, I think he was the one that the race really inconvenienced.
And Firefox, that's that novice hurdling form from last year that we're allowing in our mind.
Ticking away there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. Right, a horse that last season had champion hurdle claims at the start of them, ended the season strongly, though, with a win in the Aintree Hurdle after a lengthy steward's inquiry and at Sandown. That was Impaire, Passe, and he's made his debut over fences. Yeah,
and he stepped up. It was 2.5, obviously, his first run over fences at Ferryhouse or Moore Park went along in front of him. Slightly to his left all the way, not major, but just slightly out. That was the first fence, about fence 7, that he actually had a cut at. Grabbed at that last ditch, looked like Paul was going to let him in, and he came out of Paul's hands. And there, at the back of the fourth last, Paul had to wake him up and get him to come alive. But he did come alive, and he quick and smartly from the back of the second last fence to go and win. Now, obviously, Moore Park and 2 or 3 both fell at the last fence, and sadly 2 or 3 didn't get up. And that's a bit unfortunate, or very unfortunate, but I thought it was a good starting point from Impaire Passe. He beat Staffordshire Knot and Big Stage, but again, he looked like one that's going to be going up and not down in trip.
The race IQ data shows that he finished off the race really strongly.
Yeah. He did, but he warmed up to it, but and maybe that's where the mistake was last year. Was he ever a 2-mile hurdler? Probably not.
No, probably not. Right, there was a really competitive race at Newbury last Friday, the John Frankham Novices Chase. This was good. It
was a good race. I was really taken by the winner too, in the Jukebox Man. He's jumping. It definitely got better as he went along. He's brave, really brave. I think jumping has made this horse a quicker horse as well. And to be fair to Ben Jones, after he grabbed at the ditch in the back straight, he got him into the next 3 fences and the cross fence, got him to pop those before he injected the pace to 4 out. Absolutely flew 4 out and 3 out, but once you had opened the can, he was always going to come, and when Ben sat at the second last, the Jukebox Man came out of his hands again. I thought he was really impressive. Now, the runner-up was Masaccio. The data says he jumped better, which is good for him, but I was taken by the Jukebox Man, and from a horse you were wondering beforehand, is he a 3-miler, 2.5-miler? I'd really prefer to go down and trip than up and trip with him.
Interesting.
I thought he jumped really, attacks him, he likes what he's doing, he's looking for the next fence. I was impressed with him.
This is a good race. I mean, you've mentioned the runner-up, but there was Johnny Who, Captain Tigo, unfortunately finished lame, Boomborn, who's won a Grade 2 Rising Stars, more of which later, and Boogie Seagull, unfortunately, ended up pulling up. He ran against Johnny Who on debut. I mean, that was a deep race.
It was a deep race, and I was really impressed with the Jukebox Man, even.
Yeah. OK, I'm excited to see what he might do next. Now we're going to have a look at Caldwell Potter. Now, originally they were thinking potentially of going to Newbury with him, but Paul Nicholls said of him, I think it was on the Nick Daily podcast, that he was just too fresh and too brave to be making his debut at Newbury, so they took him to Carlisle.
Yeah, and I'd say it was a really good call, and that's where you try and start, give horses as good an experience the first day as you can. He's gassy, buzzy down to the first fence with Harry Cobden, but jumps it really well. Got to the second fence, gets in deep, but it's the first time you see him going a fraction to his left, and he was he was impressive. Third, he shortened up. Fourth fence, he was left again. That's when you're starting to notice it with him. The fifth fence, he's very long and got out to his left, which is a common thread. Harry was happy enough with him there at the seventh fence. The eighth fence gets in and pops it. You're just thinking, God, I wish this race was the other way around, because how impressive would he look. But as the race went on, I thought he would have learned plenty. Definitely the buzziness will have come off him. Now, he doesn't exactly put much daylight. Second last is grand, or the last there. Much daylight between himself and the fence at the last. But I thought he was impressive. Harry was at pains to say that ground was key to him. Definitely direction will be. But he's a huge engine, and I'd say Paul Nicholls was happy he went to Carlisle with him to get that fizziness out of him.
Very much so, as you say, it was a good call. Let's hear from Harry himself.
I was half trying on the way around just to get him to pop as many as possible. He was tearing down to all the fences, and yeah, he jumped well. He was very professional. I think he'd be better left-handed. He just prefers going off his left lead a little bit, and he just probably jumps a little bit left, but he looks like he's done that his whole life. I thought the ground was quite testing, but you know, I don't think you couldn't have the ground soft enough for this horse. I'd say it's proper soft ground, and he handled it very well. So I think he's going to be a soft ground specialist in the future. I mean, if the races come right-handed, then look, we'll take our chance, and he doesn't have to make it. He can get a lead, and he'll probably be straighter with a lead. So I think if we had the preference, we'd go left, but it doesn't have to be that way.
As Harry says, he has done it before. When he was trained by Gordon Elliott, this is him winning at Leopardstown last Christmas, going out to his left at a number of hurdles. Yeah,
he did, and even when he landed at the last, even when he's really tight, you can see his preference is to go that direction. But you know, look, he obviously cost a fortune, but you know from form that he's a pretty good horse, and I'd be happy enough what I saw where he started over fences. And you know, you can give out about it all you want, but I do think horses need beginners chases. That's where they need to start, and I think by ruling them out, would it have been fair to have had to chuck him into the John Frankham? I don't think so.
I agree, you're preaching to the converted there. Not that Carlisle is any pushover. We can have a look at Khalif de Burley. Now, he won at Newbury last week, but he started off in Carlisle as well for Paul Nicholls.
He did, and took a pretty heavy fall at Carlisle in his first start. You know, unexpected party in front of him, but this is a graduation chase. I mean, he's a first-timer in against a horse who's a Grand Annual winner.
And he went off 4-11 favourite.
Yeah, and he stood miles off. I think the fourth last comes down almost on the takeoff side, and you know, you're kind of watching that fall, you were thinking, God, that'll leave its mark. I was surprised that he came out as quickly as he did and jumped as well as he did at Newbury. Showed no ill effects of it, which is brilliant, but he's a hardy bit of stuff. Very much so, and just a 4-year-old as well. He really is, because like you, that was such a heavy fall. Frustrating as well, because he jumped really well against more experienced horses to that point. Yeah, jumped super to that point, but it was good to see him back on track at Newbury. Probably wasn't a blow-away performance, but I think when you put it into context of where he was only a couple of weeks ago, you'd be pretty happy. Yeah, very, very much so. Right, let's have a look ahead to the weekend action involving the novice chasers. We start with tomorrow, and that is the Esher Novices Chase. There are the declarations. This is a Grade 2, a new race over 3 miles, and you've had a look at these. We're going to start with a horse who also fell last time out. That's Handstands for Ben Pauling. Yeah, and I think he was well beaten when he fell, Lydia. I don't know where he'd be in the betting here. Obviously, in front of him is Soul Icon and Boom Bon. Boom Bon was well beaten at Newbury last weekend. Handstands, I thought he was tired. I think he took a tired fall. I think he'll have to improve considerably. On this, to be winning at Sandown, launches too far off it, and down he goes. Absolutely. He won the Sydney Banks as a novice hurdler last season with 6 behind Ballyburn in the Bearing. Bingham is clearly very, very highly rated by Ben Pauling, who of course also has the Jukebox Man. Now, up against him for Ollie Murphy is Resplendent Grey, who I thought shaped really well at Cheltenham against Highland. He did, and was slightly unlucky. Highland jumped absolutely brilliantly, and Resplendent Grey had left a shot. There weren't big, massive mistakes, but they were enough to hand Highland the advantage, especially at the second last, and he wasn't even as quick as him at the last, and he powers up the hill then to run him down. Highland had gotten a really good ride from Nico de Bonneville, but he's like a coiled spring, Highland, and I would expect more from Resplendent Grey tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, he's shaped like he'd want this trip at Uttoxeter last time when doing well to win.
So he's interesting. And then there is Caldwell, who made his debut at Perth in September but has since won at Wetherby.
Yeah, interesting type for Lucinda Russell and Derek Fox in the colours of Ronnie Bartlett. This wasn't his greatest jump at Wetherby, but I think on the whole he jumped a lot better than that. Second last again, slightly awkward, but or no, just kind of nods out in his head, sorry. But it was a good performance, and yeah, you'd be hoping they will improve and build on those though.
Yeah, you would, and he looks like an exciting horse. Jumped really well. Still a bit novice at times, but got better during the course of the race. Then on Saturday we have the Henry VIII. That's over the same course and distance as the Tingle Creek. Surprise, certainly for me, is that we're seeing Gordon Elliott run both Touch Me Not and Down Memory Lane against Lodersud.
Yeah, maybe that's a result of the 2 mile novice chase gone from Leopardstown at Christmas. But the Touch Me Not is pulling out after running a fortnight ago at Punchestown. Down Memory Lane was very good when he won at Navan. Obviously, you've Lodersud from Cheltenham, Rubo making his chasing debut, and Sol Aiken, who has the 8 starts over fences. So it's 5 runners, but it's a deep race.
It really is. Really liked Lodersud and Touch Me Not when they ran last time. Down Memory Lane sort of controlled the race in the front. He was third behind Caldwell Potter in that novice hurdle we saw earlier in the show. I'm really surprised Rubor is making his chase debut in a Grade 1. Is this a function of the programme, that Britain taking out beginners and novice chasers?
It kind of looks that way, but and if it is the result of that, that's not good.
No.
I don't. I mean, if Paul is absolutely delighted and he's chosen to come here, fine. But if it's a result of not having another race for a horse, especially a horse you're trying to make into a good horse, to the horses you want to promote the sport, you've got to give them races to start in. And I don't know the British programme like I used to. I don't know it inside out anymore. But if there wasn't a beginner's chase somewhere, either this week or next week, then that's poor from British racing. That's poor from British racecourses.
I think it does need a review. That is Ribord, of course, who is a good horse, won at Kempton and a Grade 2 at Wincanton already this season over hurdles, making his chase debut in a Grade 1 on Saturday at Sandown. Well done, Lydia, got there eventually.
Okay, gents, next item on the agenda is we need to shoot something to use in the ad slot for the Road to Cheltenham.
The what?
Road to Cheltenham ad slot?
The Road to Cheltenham?
Yeah, Paddy Power sponsored the Road to Cheltenham on Racing TV. You should probably know that.
How much is that costing us?
Doesn't matter.
Ah, come on, you know I'm on the Road to Cheltenham.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. We already know you're on the Road to Cheltenham.
Oh, thanks, Tom. So now you want the viewers to endure me for the show and the ad slot?
Well, we can't afford to bring in anyone else.
Because the amount of bloody money we're paying to sponsor the thing.
Oh, forget it.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham. Apparently. First I've heard.
So we're going to end by teasing what's coming up this weekend and what we're focusing on in detail next week. We start by having a look at the Trust a Trader Peterborough Chase, which is at Huntingdon on Sunday, and potentially it involves the horse that finished 6th in the Paddy Power Gold Cup, the Ryanair winner Protectorat, against Ginny's Destiny, the runner-up in the Turners from last season at the Cheltenham Festival, who pulled up in the Paddy Power Gold Cup.
He did, yeah, and then chuck in Nickelback and Manila Drama, who both like to go along close to the pace, and with Genie's Destiny, that'll be set up nicely for Protectorat.
Yes, and the King George had also been mentioned for Protectorat. Maybe this is an instead. Let's have a look at the Hilly Way, which sees the return of Energumen, and thank goodness for that. Now, look at all of those horses trained by Willie Mullins in this race. How many of those would you expect to see?
I think Dinah Blue, Fernie Hollow, Blue Lord, Energumen were the ones maybe appreciated now that he didn't get to run a Thurles, so we penciled in there as well. But Energumen definitely runs, and I'd be surprised if he's not joined by 2 or 3 more.
He won in 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, they were. He won and he was good on both days, but that looks a stronger race on paper in either of the renewals that he won.
It very much does, and some friendly fire, potentially even Fernie Hollow, provided something doesn't happen between now and a couple of seconds before the off.
He seems to be all right at the moment, anyway.
Yeah, and we saw him last season.
I didn't see him since last week, but he was grand the last time I saw him.
And we hadn't seen him since November 2022 when he came out last February, but he was very good at Naas.
He was very good. Look, he's a horse with a huge engine and very patient owners.
We're going to learn a lot from that race, I think, aren't we?
Hope so.
Yeah.
Hope so. It'll be interesting to see how Energamine gets on. He's obviously older now, but he does seem to be in great form at home, and for a horse of his age, he has very few miles on the clock.
Okay, so of course he missed last season, the dual Queen Mother Champion Chase winner. Great to have him back. At Sandown on Saturday, we have the small matter of the Betfair Tingle Creek. We can have a look at the decks for that. They all stood their ground at the 48 hours stage, and this is a setup between Jonbon and Quilixios.
You'd have to think it is. A Solidness won't be too far off the pace either. And obviously if JPR won, then the Haldon Gold Cup winner. But you'd imagine with the improvement Quilixios, or not improvement, Quilixios showed at Naas for being ridden positively, how happy the horse looked in the race. You'd imagine that that's how they'll be wanting to ride Quilixios on Saturday. But Jonbon, Nico doesn't hang around on Jonbon either. He was very positive on him, obviously in the Schlur, positive on him here last year in the Tingle Creek as well. Didn't hang around in the celebration chase, and Jonbon has a great record at Sandown, 2 celebrations and at Tingle Creek. So yeah, it'll be a really good race.
Yeah, it should be an absolute corker. Which one do you favour?
Jonbon. I think Jonbon at the moment sets the standard in that division. I've no doubt he does. Energamine has to come back. Ed Fabiolo, we're not going to see until after Christmas. Gaelic Warrior, we haven't seen out of Novice Company. So for my money, Jonbon sets the standard, and I think he'll be really hard to beat on Saturday.
Okay, we can find out whether he's right this time next week. In the meantime, you can catch up with the column on racingtv.com/Road to Cheltenham. Just remains for me to thank you for your company and insight today. It's been good fun. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll see you again next week.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.